Enola Eudora Holmes would be your husband.
Yes, he has a first name. I was surprised too. He told me great. Something worthy for Holmes' name. Would I now be giving that up? I do. Can I love him without losing myself? Which brings us back to the moral of the wedding. Why are you pursuing me? It's your brother.
Welcome to Z Cineplex, say your ultimate entertainment destination. Welcome to Z Cineplex, the home of entertainment, creativity, and cinematic excitement. Our channel is dedicated to bringing viewers a rich collection of engaging content that celebrates the world of movies, storytelling, and visual entertainment. Whether you're a passionate film enthusiast, someone who enjoys discovering new cinematic experiences, or simply looking for high-quality entertainment, Z Cineplex is designed to be your go-to destination. We strive to create content that is informative, enjoyable, and engaging for audiences of all ages, offering a unique blend of movie-related features, entertainment updates, insightful discussions, creative videos, and much more. Every upload is crafted with attention to quality, ensuring that our viewers receive an enjoyable experience that keeps them coming back for more. At Z Cineplex, we believe that cinema is more than just watching films. It's about experiencing emotions, exploring stories, appreciating creativity, and connecting with people who share the same passion for entertainment. Our mission is to build a vibrant community where movie lovers and entertainment enthusiasts can discover exciting content, share their opinions, and stay connected with the latest trends in the entertainment industry. We are committed to consistently improving our content, embracing new ideas, and delivering videos that entertain, inform, and inspire our growing audience. Whether you're here for movie highlights, entertainment discussions, reviews, cinematic moments, or fresh creative content, Z Cineplex promises an enjoyable journey filled with excitement, quality, and unforgettable entertainment. Join our community by subscribing, turning on notifications, and becoming part of the Z Cineplex family as we continue to explore the fascinating world of cinema and entertainment together. Thank you for your support, and welcome to Z Cineplex, where every video brings entertainment to life. Enola Holmes 3 is a 2026 mystery adventure film and the third chapter in the Enola Holmes franchise, continuing the story of the young detective introduced in the previous films Enola Holmes, 2020, and Enola Holmes 2, 2022. Based on the world created by Nancy Springer's The Enola Holmes Mysteries book series, the film once again follows Enola Holmes, the brilliant, rebellious, and determined younger sister of the legendary detective Sherlock Holmes. Portrayed by Millie Bobby Brown, Enola has grown from a teenager searching for her missing mother into a confident investigator who has established herself as a detective in her own right. The third film continues to explore her struggle to balance her personal life, independence, and growing reputation while proving that she is more than just Sherlock Holmes' younger sister. The film brings back several major characters from the previous installments, including Louis Partridge as Lord Tewkesbury, Enola's closest companion and romantic partner, whose relationship with her becomes a central part of her emotional journey. Henry Cavill returns as Sherlock Holmes, continuing the complicated but supportive sibling dynamic between the world-famous detective and Enola, while Helena Bonham Carter reprises her role as Eudora Holmes, whose unconventional teachings continue to influence Enola's worldview and investigative style. The supporting cast also includes Himesh Patel and Sharon Duncan Brewster, who contribute new characters and additional layers to the mystery surrounding Enola's latest case. Directed by Philip Barantini, Enola Holmes 3 represents a major creative change for the franchise, becoming the first film in the series not directed by Harry Bradbeer. who directed the first two entries. Barantini brings a different approach to the series while maintaining the signature elements that audiences associate with Enola Holmes, including fast-paced detective work, fourth-wall-breaking humor, historical settings, action sequences, and themes of self-discovery. The screenplay was written by Jack Thorne, who also worked on the previous films, but the third installment features an entirely original storyline rather than adapting a specific mystery from Nancy Springer's novels. This allowed the filmmakers to create a new adventure designed specifically for the cinematic version of Enola, expanding her world beyond the events explored in the books. The story begins with Enola Holmes entering a new phase of her life while living in Malta and preparing for her marriage to Lord Tewkesbury. After years of searching for independence and building her own identity, Enola appears ready to embrace a more personal future. However, her plans quickly change when Sherlock Holmes unexpectedly disappears under mysterious circumstances. With Sherlock, one of the greatest detectives of the Victorian era, suddenly missing, Enola is faced with a challenge unlike any she has encountered before. Instead of following her brother's guidance, she must step into his role and investigate the disappearance herself. As Enola searches for Sherlock, she uncovers a complicated mystery filled with hidden motives, secret alliances, and dangerous individuals who do not want the truth to be revealed. Her investigation forces her to rely on her unique combination of intelligence, courage, intuition, and unconventional detective methods. Unlike Sherlock's logical and traditional approach, Enola's style is shaped by creativity, empathy, and her ability to understand people and situations from unexpected perspectives. The case pushes her to question what she knows about her brother, her family, and the world around her. Alongside the central mystery, the film continues to explore Enola's personal growth and the challenges of balancing love and independence. Her relationship with Tewkesbury faces new pressures as she attempts to decide whether she can build a future with someone while still maintaining her freedom and individuality. The disappearance of Sherlock also forces Enola to confront their complicated relationship, recognizing both the similarities and differences between them as detectives. Through the investigation, she discovers more about her family's history and her own place within the Holmes legacy. Visually, Enola Holmes 3 continues the franchise's vibrant interpretation of Victorian-era England and Europe, combining historical environments with modern storytelling techniques. The film blends mystery, adventure, comedy, and emotional drama while maintaining the energetic tone that defined the earlier movies. Its themes focus on courage, identity, independence, family relationships, and the importance of creating one's own path rather than living in someone else's shadow. Enola Holmes 3 was released on July 1, 2026. Following its release, the film received generally positive to mixed reviews from critics. Many reviewers praised Millie Bobby Brown's performance, highlighting her ability to continue portraying Enola as a charismatic, intelligent, and emotionally complex protagonist. Critics also recognized the film's entertaining mystery, strong character interactions, visual style, and continuation of the franchise's adventurous spirit. However, some reviewers felt that the story did not reach the originality or freshness of the first film and compared it unfavorably with previous installments. Despite the mixed critical response, Enola Holmes 3 was regarded as another successful continuation of Enola Holmes' journey, further developing her transformation from a young girl seeking independence into a respected detective with her own reputation. The film reinforces the franchise's central message that Enola does not need to follow Sherlock's path to achieve greatness. Instead, she continues to define her own identity, solve mysteries in her own way, and create a legacy separate from the famous Holmes name. The story of Enola Holmes 3 begins as Enola Holmes and Lord Tewkesbury arrive at the Mediterranean island of Malta for the most important personal moment of their lives, their wedding. After the adventures, mysteries, and personal struggles that shape their relationship, the couple hopes to begin a new chapter together away from the constant pressures of London society. Malta is chosen as the wedding location because of its deep connection to Tewkesbury's family history. His late father, Lord Peter, served on the island during the era of British occupation, and Lady Tewkesbury believes that returning to Malta represents a meaningful way to honor her late husband's memory. The island, with its historic architecture, military traditions, and complicated political past, provides a symbolic setting for the beginning of Enola and Tewksbury's future together. However, their wedding preparations are not without conflict. Sherlock Holmes arrives in Malta to support his sister but immediately expresses his doubts about the marriage. Although Sherlock cares deeply for Enola, he believes that becoming Lady Tewksbury could force her into a traditional aristocratic role that limits her independence. He worries that Enola, who has always rejected society's expectations and fought to create her own identity, may lose the qualities that make her unique. Sherlock argues that Enola has spent her entire life proving she does not need anyone's approval, and he fears that marriage could cause her to abandon her ambitions as a detective. Enola rejects this idea, insisting that love and independence are not opposites. She explains that she can be a wife while still remaining a detective, continuing to investigate mysteries and making her own choices. While the wedding preparations continue, Sherlock secretly becomes involved in another investigation connected to Malta's hidden history. He does not reveal the details to Enola because he believes the case may put her in danger and wants to protect her from becoming involved. However, before Sherlock can share what he has discovered, he suddenly disappears without leaving any explanation. His disappearance creates immediate concern, as even someone as skilled and cautious as Sherlock Holmes should not vanish without a trace. Enola quickly realizes that something is wrong and begins searching for clues. At the same time, another mysterious event draws Enola into a much larger conspiracy. A dying Maltese soldier is found carrying a final message, repeatedly saying what appears to be the word wrath. At first, the strange word seems like a warning about revenge or danger. But Enola's careful observation leads her to believe she has misunderstood the message. She discovers that the soldier was actually attempting to say Wraith, the surname of Professor Adeline Wraith, a woman who appears to have some connection to Sherlock's disappearance. Determined to discover the truth, Enola begins investigating the mysterious Professor Wraith. Searching Sherlock's belongings, Enola discovers a torn piece of an expensive dress hidden among his possessions. The unusual clue suggests that Sherlock had recently encountered a woman connected to the case. Following the evidence, Enola tracks the woman through the streets of Valletta, Malta's historic capital city. Before Enola can question her, however, the woman is suddenly targeted by a hidden sniper and fatally wounded. In her final moments, she delivers a chilling warning to Enola: "She will kill you." The cryptic message convinces Enola that Sherlock's disappearance is only part of a much deeper and more dangerous mystery. Enola attempts to chase the sniper responsible for the attack but fails to capture him. The failed pursuit only increases her suspicion that someone powerful is controlling events from the shadows. As she continues investigating Professor Adeline Wraith, Enola discovers the shocking truth: Wraith is not a real person but a carefully constructed identity created by Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' most dangerous criminal adversary. Having escaped from prison, Moriarty has reinvented herself under the Wraith name and spent months manipulating events across Malta. Every detail, from the wedding location to Sherlock's disappearance, has been carefully planned as part of her larger scheme. Moriarty reveals that she deliberately arranged for Enola and Tewksbury to come to Malta because she needed Enola's detective abilities. She knew that Sherlock would investigate the mystery and that Enola would eventually follow him when he disappeared. Sherlock's kidnapping was not simply an attack against him, it was a calculated trap designed to force Enola into solving a puzzle that Moriarty herself could not complete. By using Enola's curiosity, intelligence, and determination against her, Moriarty turns the young detective into an unwilling participant in her plan. The truth about Sherlock's disappearance is eventually revealed. He has been captured and imprisoned alongside Lady Tewksbury. Moriarty has been using them as leverage while waiting for Enola to uncover the secret hidden beneath Malta's history. Despite the danger, Enola refuses to give up. To rescue Sherlock and solve the mystery, she forms an unlikely alliance with Dr. John Watson, who has recently entered Sherlock's life and understands his methods better than almost anyone. She also partners with Mickey, a Maltese freedom fighter who knows the island's history, political struggles, and hidden resistance movements. Together, Enola, Watson, and Mickey uncover evidence of a decades-old conspiracy connected to the Battle of Khost in Afghanistan. During the conflict, a group of British military officers secretly stole a massive quantity of Afghan gold and transported it to Malta. Instead of returning the treasure, they concealed it and erased evidence of the theft. Over the years, the truth disappeared beneath layers of military influence, political protection, and powerful connections. Tewkesbury's late father was unknowingly connected to the operation because of his military service, and his old war medals become one of the most important clues in identifying those responsible. As Enola investigates further, she discovers that the conspiracy reaches the highest levels of British authority in Malta. The mysterious masked figure connected to the stolen treasure is revealed to be Brigadier Sampson, Tewkesbury's godfather and his father's closest military friend. Sampson, along with the British governor and several senior officers, help organize and hide the theft of the Afghan gold. They use their positions of power to protect themselves, silence witnesses, and ensure that the secret remained hidden for decades. Using Sherlock's hidden messages and coded instructions, Enola discovers the location of the secret cave where the stolen treasure has been kept. However, she immediately realizes that finding the gold was exactly what Moriarty wanted. Knowing Moriarty's methods, Enola understands that the discovery is likely a trap. Her suspicions are proven correct when, after retrieving the treasure chest, Moriarty's hired soldiers surround her and Dr. Watson. With no obvious escape route, Enola appears to have fallen directly into Moriarty's final plan. Fortunately, Tewkesbury and Mickey Eel arrive with a group of Maltese rebels who oppose the corrupt British authorities. Their intervention changes the situation and allows Enola, Watson, and their allies to escape with the stolen treasure. That discovery of the gold threatens to expose decades of corruption, but Moriarty manages to escape before she can be captured. She flees Malta on horseback, forcing Enola into one final pursuit to end the mystery once and for all. The chase leads Enola to the location where Sherlock and Lady Tewkesbury are being held prisoner. In the final confrontation, Enola faces Moriarty directly and proves that she is no longer simply Sherlock Holmes' younger sister. Using her intelligence, courage, and ability to predict her opponent's actions, she manages to overpower Moriarty. Meanwhile, Sherlock, who has suffered greatly during his imprisonment, is consumed by anger and considers killing Moriarty as revenge. Enola stops him, reminding him that justice and not vengeance is what separates them from the criminals they pursue. Sherlock listens to his sister, and together they choose to arrest Moriarty instead of becoming like her. After Moriarty's defeat, the truth about the stolen Afghan gold becomes public. Brigadier Sampson confesses his involvement in the theft, revealing the extent of the corruption within the British military leadership. Sampson and the other officers responsible are arrested and punished for their crimes. Enola and Sherlock make the decision that the treasure cannot remain in British possession because it was stolen from Afghanistan. They ensure that the gold is returned to its rightful owners, while Mickey Eel believes the scandal will help Malta's independence movement by exposing the abuses committed under colonial rule. With the case finally resolved, Sherlock and Enola repair their relationship. Sherlock apologizes for doubting her choices and admits that he underestimated her growth as a detective. He finally accepts that Enola is no longer someone living in his shadow but a detective equal to him in her own right. Their relationship changes from one of protection and disagreement to one based on mutual respect and admiration. The revelations also deeply affect Tewkesbury. After learning that his family's history is connected to corruption and imperial wrongdoing, he questions the meaning of his aristocratic title and inherited privilege. Rather than continue benefiting from a system connected to injustice, he chooses to reject his position in the House of Lords and abandons his noble identity. He decides to live under his birth name, Ernest Augustus Tabitha Gower, choosing personal integrity over social status. In the final moments of the film, Enola makes her own decision about her future. Although she marries Tewkesbury, she refuses to surrender her identity or become defined only by her husband's title. She remains Enola Holmes, a detective who follows her own path and continues solving mysteries on her own terms. The film concludes with Enola and Tewkesbury finally exchanging vows in a small, emotional cliff-top ceremony overlooking the Maltese coastline. The wedding is officiated by Eudora Holmes, bringing Enola's journey full circle as she begins married life not as someone who has lost her independence, but as a woman who has successfully balanced love, family, and her own extraordinary destiny. Enola Holmes 3 brings together the returning stars of the franchise with new performers portraying characters connected to the film's expanded mystery, political conspiracy, and emotional conflicts. The third installment continues the story of Enola Holmes as she moves into a new stage of her life, balancing her identity as a detective with her relationship, family responsibilities, and the expectations of Victorian society. The cast represents different worlds within the story, including the Holmes family, British aristocracy, military officials, criminal masterminds, and Maltese freedom fighters. Each character plays an important role in shaping Enola's latest investigation, which becomes one of the most dangerous cases she has ever faced. Millie Bobby Brown as Enola. Doria Holmes. Millie Bobby Brown returns as Enola Holmes, the central character of the franchise and the youngest sibling in the legendary Holmes family. Enola has evolved from a rebellious teenager searching for her missing mother into a confident and respected detective who has created her own identity outside the reputation of Sherlock Holmes. Intelligent, courageous, observant, and emotionally determined, Enola continues to challenge the limitations placed on women during the Victorian era while proving that she belongs in the world of investigation. In Enola Holmes 3, Enola faces one of her most personal challenges yet as she prepares to marry Lord Tewkesbury while refusing to give up her independence. The film explores her struggle between embracing love and maintaining the freedom that has always defined her. Although society expects her to settle into the role of a noblewoman, Enola insists that marriage does not mean abandoning her ambitions or becoming someone else. Throughout the film, she continues using her unique detective style, relying on intuition, creativity, disguise, and emotional intelligence rather than simply following traditional investigative methods. As in the previous films, Enola frequently breaks the fourth wall by speaking directly to the audience. These moments allow viewers to experience her private thoughts, observations, humor, and reactions as she pieces together clues. Her narration continues to highlight her confidence, determination, and personal growth. In the third film, Enola's journey focuses on proving that she can be both a partner and an independent detective while creating a legacy separate from her famous family name. Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes. Henry Cavill returns as Sherlock Holmes, the world-renowned detective and Enola's older brother. Known throughout Britain for his extraordinary intelligence, deductive reasoning, and ability to solve impossible cases, Sherlock remains one of the most respected investigators of his era. However, beneath his confident exterior is a complicated relationship with his younger sister, whom he still sees as someone he needs to protect. In Enola Holmes 3, Sherlock struggles with accepting how much Enola has grown. While he admires her intelligence and courage, he worries that her marriage to Tewkesbury could cause her to lose the independence that makes her special. His disagreement with Enola's choices creates emotional tension between the siblings, but his perspective changes when he becomes trapped in Moriarty's dangerous scheme. Sherlock's disappearance becomes the central mystery that forces Enola to take control of the investigation. Captured and held hostage, Sherlock experiences what it feels like to depend on someone else for rescue. Through this experience, he finally recognizes that Enola is not simply his younger sister but the detective capable of standing beside him as an equal. His relationship with Enola evolves from one based on protection and doubt into one built on respect and partnership. Helena Bonham Carter as Doria Holmes. Helena Bonham Carter reprises her role as Doria Holmes, the unconventional and influential mother of Enola and Sherlock. Doria has always been one of the most important figures in Enola's life, teaching her daughter to think independently, question authority, and reject the traditional expectations imposed on women. Her unconventional upbringing shaped Enola into the fearless detective she becomes. As a passionate freedom fighter, Doria represents the values of justice, equality, and personal freedom that continue to guide Enola's decisions. In the third film, she provides emotional support as Enola enters a new chapter of her life. Rather than viewing marriage as a limitation, Doria encourages Enola to remain true to herself. She plays a meaningful role in the conclusion of the story by officiating Enola and Tewkesbury's wedding, symbolizing the continuation of the Holmes family's values. Louis Partridge as Viscount Ernest Augustus Tewkesbury. Louis Partridge returns as Lord Tewkesbury, Enola's romantic partner and closest ally. Tewkesbury has grown significantly since his introduction, transforming from a young aristocrat uncertain of his place in society into someone who supports Enola's independence and values her strength. In Enola Holmes 3, Tewkesbury prepares to marry Enola while confronting the complicated legacy of his own family. The discovery of his father's connection to the stolen Afghan gold forces him to question the privileges associated with his title and the responsibilities of his aristocratic position. Rather than protecting his family's reputation, Tewkesbury chooses honesty and justice. His relationship with Enola is portrayed as a partnership based on equality. Unlike traditional Victorian relationships, Tewkesbury does not expect Enola to abandon her detective work or become defined only by his title. He supports her investigations and fights alongside her during the dangerous events in Malta. By the end of the film, his decision to reject his aristocratic identity reflects his desire to create a life based on personal integrity rather than inherited privilege. Himesh Patel as Dr. John Watson. Himesh Patel joins the franchise as Dr. John Watson, Sherlock Holmes' trusted friend, confidant, and investigative partner. Watson brings a different style of intelligence to the Holmes world, combining medical knowledge, compassion, and practical reasoning with the analytical skills of Sherlock and Enola. After Sherlock disappears, Watson becomes a valuable ally for Enola. His understanding of Sherlock's methods helps her interpret clues and uncover the truth behind Moriarty's elaborate plan. Watson also provides emotional balance within the investigation, often acting as a bridge between Sherlock's logical approach and Enola's more instinctive methods. His introduction expands the Holmes universe by showing another important relationship in Sherlock's life while establishing Watson as someone who respects Enola's abilities and recognizes her talent as a detective. Sharon Duncan Brewster as Myra Troy. Professor Moriarty. Sharon Duncan Brewster portrays Myra Troy, who is later revealed to be Professor Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' greatest criminal rival. Moriarty serves as the main antagonist of Enola Holmes 3 and represents the most dangerous intellectual challenge Enola has ever faced. A master manipulator with exceptional strategic abilities, Moriarty creates the false identity of Professor Adeline Wraith to hide her true intentions. She carefully plans every event surrounding the Malta investigation, including Sherlock's disappearance, the wedding location, and Enola's involvement. Unlike ordinary criminals, Moriarty does not rely only on violence as she uses psychology, deception, and manipulation to control people. Her rivalry with the Holmes family becomes the central conflict of the film. Moriarty believes she can predict Enola's actions, but Enola's creativity and emotional understanding allow her to challenge Moriarty's calculations. Their confrontation becomes a battle between two brilliant minds, with Enola proving that intelligence and compassion can overcome manipulation. Hattie Morahan as Lady Tewkesbury. Hattie Morahan returns as Lady Tewkesbury, Tewkesbury's mother and a respected member of British aristocracy. Her decision to hold the wedding in Malta connects the family to the island's history and sets many of the film's events into motion. However, Lady Tewkesbury becomes another victim of Moriarty's plan when she is kidnapped alongside Sherlock. Her character represents the connection between the Tewkesbury family's past and a hidden military conspiracy involving the stolen Afghan gold. Susan Wokoma as Edith. Susan Wokoma returns as Edith, Eudoria Holmes' trusted friend and one of Enola's strongest mentors. Edith has always encouraged Enola to embrace her independence and confidence. In the third film, she provides guidance during Enola's transition into adulthood and appears at her wedding, representing the supportive community surrounding Enola. Joe Azzopardi as Mickey Eel. Joe Azzopardi plays Mickey Eel, a Maltese freedom fighter and member of the Partito Antireformista. Mickey Eel becomes one of Enola's most important allies during the investigation. His knowledge of Malta's political struggles, local history, and resistance movements helps Enola uncover the truth behind the stolen gold conspiracy. Mickey Eel's character also introduces the broader themes of colonialism, independence, and justice, showing how the corruption of powerful figures affected ordinary people in Malta. Jason Watkins as Brigadier Sampson. Jason Watkins portrays Brigadier Sampson, Tewksbury's godfather and a respected military figure connected to his late father. Initially appearing as a loyal family friend and honorable officer, Sampson is eventually revealed to be one of the key figures involved in hiding the theft of the Afghan gold. His betrayal becomes one of the film's biggest revelations, forcing Tewksbury to confront the darker side of his family history. Sampson represents the corruption hidden behind power, status, and military authority. Paul Colley as the British governor of Malta. Paul Colley plays the unnamed British governor of Malta, a powerful official involved in the political system that allowed the stolen gold conspiracy to remain hidden. His character represents the institutional corruption and abuse of authority that protected those responsible for the crime. Nicholas Aaron as Sergeant Nicholas Smith. Nicholas Aaron portrays Sergeant Nicholas Smith, a military figure connected to the investigation. His character contributes to the film's exploration of the British military presence in Malta and the secrets hidden within its ranks. Myron Enola as Sergeant Indri. Myron Enola plays Sergeant Indri, a Maltese military figure involved in the events surrounding Enola's investigation. His role adds further depth to the conflict between local interests and British-controlled authority. Robbie O'Neill as Corporal Malik. Robbie O'Neill portrays Corporal Malik, another military character connected to the forces operating in Malta during the investigation. Stephen Chance as a senior officer. Stephen Chance appears as a senior British officer connected to the military leadership involved in protecting the secrets surrounding the stolen treasure. Michaela Farrugia as Krista. Michaela Farrugia plays Krista, a Maltese character connected to the investigation and the local community affected by the larger conspiracy. David Stern as Eric. David Stern portrays Eric, a coachman who assists during Enola's journey across Malta and becomes connected to the events surrounding the mystery. Nicolette Yardley-Moore as Baroness Guildford. Nicolette Yardley-Moore plays Baroness Guildford, a member of the British aristocracy whose presence adds to the exploration of Victorian class structures, wealth, and social influence. Together, the cast of Enola Holmes 3 creates a larger and more complex world than the previous films. From Enola's continued transformation into a legendary detective to Sherlock's battle with Moriarty and the political secrets buried beneath Malta's history, every character contributes to a story about independence, justice, family, and the courage to create one's own destiny. The development of Enola Holmes 3 began as Netflix looked to continue the success of its Enola Holmes film series, which had become one of the platform's most popular original movie franchises. The third installment was officially announced in November 2024, confirming that the story of Enola Holmes would continue following the events of Enola Holmes 2. 2022. The announcement revealed that Millie Bobby Brown would return as Enola Holmes, reprising her role as the young detective while also continuing her role as a producer on the project. Brown's involvement behind the scenes reflected her growing creative influence within the franchise, as she had become closely connected to the development of Enola's character and the direction of the series. Alongside Brown's return, Philip Barantini was announced as the director of the third film. His appointment marked a significant change for the franchise, as he replaced Harry Bradbeer, who had directed both previous installments. The decision to bring in a new filmmaker was intended to introduce a fresh cinematic style while maintaining the core elements that made the earlier film successful. Barantini, known for his character-driven storytelling and ability to balance emotional drama with tension, was expected to bring a more grounded and mature approach to Enola's next adventure. From the beginning of development, Enola Holmes 3 was described as a darker and more mature entry compared with the previous films. While the earlier movies focused heavily on Enola's teenage rebellion, discovery of her identity, and introduction to the world of detective work, the third installment was designed to explore her transition into adulthood. The filmmakers wanted to present Enola as a more experienced detective facing larger personal and social challenges. The story was developed around the idea that Enola had grown beyond simply proving herself and was now dealing with questions about love, responsibility, independence, and her place in a changing world. The creative team aimed to expand the scope of the franchise by moving beyond smaller individual mysteries and introducing a larger historical and political storyline. The film was designed to combine the series' traditional elements of mystery, adventure, humor, action, and Enola's direct connection with the audience with more serious themes involving colonial history, corruption, and social injustice. The darker tone allowed the filmmakers to explore the consequences of historical events and how the actions of previous generations continue to affect the present. In April 2025, Netflix confirmed the return of several major cast members from the previous films. Louis Partridge returned as Lord Tewkesbury, continuing the character's emotional connection with Enola and his growing importance within her personal journey. Henry Cavill returned as Sherlock Holmes, bringing back the complicated sibling relationships between Sherlock and Enola. Helena Bonham Carter was confirmed to reprise her role as Eudoria Holmes, whose influence continues to shape Enola's values and independence. Himesh Patel returned as Dr. John Watson, expanding Sherlock's world by introducing his trusted companion into the story. Sharon Duncan Brewster was also confirmed to return as Myra Troy, a character who plays a major role in the film's central conflict. The return of the original cast allowed the filmmakers to continue developing relationships established in the previous movies while introducing new challenges for the characters. The third film was designed not only as another mystery adventure but also as a continuation of the emotional journeys of Enola, Sherlock, and Tewkesbury. The returning actors helped maintain the identity of the franchise while supporting the film's more ambitious storyline. Jack Thorne returned as screenwriter for Enola Holmes 3, continuing his work on the franchise after writing the first two films. Instead of adapting a specific storyline from Nancy Springer's The Enola Holmes Mysteries novels, Thorne created an original story specifically for the cinematic universe. This approach allowed the filmmakers greater freedom to explore new situations, introduce original conflicts, and develop Enola's character in directions that were different from the books. The screenplay continued the franchise's tradition of connecting mystery adventures with important social issues. The first Enola Holmes film explored women's voting rights and the fight for political representation, while Enola Holmes 2 focused on workers' rights and industrial exploitation. For the third installment, Thorne chose to examine British colonial history, imperial power, and the consequences of actions taken during the expansion of the British Empire. The decision allowed the film to explore a broader historical perspective while maintaining Enola's role as a detective who uncovers hidden truths. Thorne also wanted to create a story that matched the creative style of new director Philip Barantini while reflecting Millie Bobby Brown's development as an actress. Since Brown had grown significantly since the first film, the screenplay was written to portray Enola as an adult woman rather than a young girl discovering herself. The story focuses on a more emotionally complex version of the character, showing her balancing personal relationships with her determination to remain independent. A major influence on the film's story was the history of Malta and its connection to the British Empire. Malta became a British possession in 1800 and developed into one of Britain's most important military locations. As the crown colony of Malta, the island served as the headquarters of the British Mediterranean Fleet and played a key role in protecting British interests in the region. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 increased Malta's strategic importance, making it a major naval and commercial connection point between Britain, the Mediterranean, and British India. The film's historical setting allowed the production team to explore Malta's complex relationship with British colonial rule. The island's military importance, cultural history, and political struggles became central elements of the fictional mystery. Rather than simply using Malta as a visual backdrop, the filmmakers incorporated its historical significance into the story's themes of power, exploitation, resistance, and justice. For the screenplay, Jack Thorne created the fictional Battle of Khost, an event that forms the foundation of the film's central conspiracy. The fictional battle was inspired by real historical events connected to British military campaigns in Afghanistan during the 19th century. In particular, the story drew influence from conflicts involving British invasions of Afghanistan and incidents of military occupation, including the attack and plunder of the Bala Hissar fortress in Kabul. These historical references provided the foundation for the film's fictional storyline involving stolen treasure, military corruption, and the long-term consequences of imperial actions. Principal photography for Enola Holmes 3 began on April 10, 2025. Production took place primarily at Shepperton Studios in England, where filmmakers constructed sets and filmed many of the interior sequences. Shepperton Studios provided the controlled environment needed for detailed period production, including Victorian-era designs, investigation scenes, and dramatic sequences requiring specialized filming conditions. Additional filming took place on location in Malta, including the historic cities of Valletta and Mdina. These locations were chosen because of their preserved architecture, ancient streets, fortifications, and connection to Malta's colonial history. The production used the island's historic environments to create an authentic setting for Enola's investigation while highlighting the contrast between Malta's beautiful landscapes and the darker secrets hidden beneath its history. The location filming in Malta played an important role in establishing the visual identity of the film. The production team incorporated the island's coastal views, historic buildings, military structures, and narrow streets into the story's atmosphere. These locations helped create a larger sense of adventure and allowed the film to expand beyond the London-based settings of the previous movies. The production also focused on creating a more cinematic and mature visual style. With Philip Barantini directing, the film aimed to combine emotional character moments with large-scale mystery sequences. The filmmakers emphasized the contrast between intimate personal conflicts such as Enola's relationship with Duxbury and her disagreements with Sherlock and the larger political conspiracy surrounding Malta's history. On June 27, 2025, Millie Bobby Brown announced that filming had officially wrapped, confirming the completion of principal photography. Following the end of filming, the project entered post-production, where the creative team worked on editing, visual effects, sound design, music, and final adjustments to complete the film. The post-production process focused on refining the film's darker tone, enhancing action sequences, and ensuring that the historical setting and mystery elements blended effectively. Overall, the production of Enola Holmes 3 represented a major expansion of the franchise, with a new director, a more mature storyline, an original screenplay, returning cast members, and a historically inspired mystery set against Malta's colonial past. The film aimed to take Enola Holmes into a new phase of her journey. The production continued the franchise's central themes of independence, justice, courage, and the importance of creating one's own identity while introducing a broader and more ambitious story than the previous installments. The musical score for Enola Holmes 3 was composed by Aaron May and David Ridley, marking a new chapter in the musical identity of the franchise. The pair took over scoring responsibilities from Daniel Pemberton, who created the original soundtracks for both Enola Holmes, 2020, and Enola Holmes 2, 2022. Pemberton's compositions played an important role in defining the series' musical personality, combining energetic orchestral arrangements, playful rhythms, mystery-driven melodies, and adventurous themes that reflected Enola's youthful curiosity and rebellious nature. With the third installment moving into a darker and more mature direction, May and Ridley were brought in to create a fresh musical approach that matched the evolution of both the story and its characters. Aaron May and David Ridley developed a score that reflects the changing tone of Enola Holmes 3, which presents Enola as an older, more experienced detective facing larger personal and historical challenges, rather than focusing only on the excitement and youthful energy of the earlier films. The new score introduces a more dramatic and atmospheric sound. The music emphasizes Enola's emotional growth, her struggle to balance independence with her relationship with Duxbury, and the pressure of stepping out of Sherlock Holmes' shadow. The compositions support the film's themes of identity, responsibility, justice, and the search for truth. The composers created a soundtrack that blends traditional orchestral elements with a more intense cinematic style. The score uses sweeping string arrangements, powerful brass sections, dramatic percussion, and subtle melodic patterns to enhance the mystery and adventure at the center of the story. The Victorian-era setting remains an important influence, with the music maintaining a sense of historical elegance while introducing darker tones that reflect the film's exploration of political corruption, hidden secrets, and colonial history. A major focus of the score is Enola's continued transformation as a detective. Throughout the film, The music follows her journey from a confident investigator into someone facing her most challenging case yet. The composers use recurring musical ideas to represent Enola's intelligence, determination, and independence. Moments of investigation feature carefully layered suspenseful arrangements, while emotional scenes use more reflective melodies to highlight her relationships with Sherlock, Tewkesbury, and her family. The score also plays a significant role in building tension around Sherlock Holmes' disappearance and Professor Moriarty's elaborate plan. The music becomes darker and more suspenseful during scenes involving hidden clues, deception, and danger. Moriarty's presence is supported by a more dramatic and threatening musical style, creating a contrast between Enola's hopeful determination and the calculated manipulation of her opponent. The soundtrack helps transform the conflict between Enola and Moriarty into a battle not only of intelligence but also of opposing philosophies. The Malta setting provided the composers with an opportunity to introduce a different atmosphere compared with the previous films. The Mediterranean environment, historic architecture, and connection to British colonial history influenced the musical direction of the film. The score incorporates a sense of exploration and cultural atmosphere, reflecting the beauty of Malta while also emphasizing the darker secrets hidden beneath its history. The music helps create a contrast between the island's stunning landscapes and the dangerous conspiracy surrounding the stolen Afghan gold. The composers also focused on maintaining the balance between mystery, action, and emotional storytelling that has become a defining feature of the Enola Holmes franchise. Action sequences are supported by energetic orchestral arrangements that increase the sense of urgency and adventure, while quieter moments allow the characters' emotions and relationships to take center stage. The music enhances Enola's humor, confidence, and unconventional approach to detective work while also allowing the film to explore more serious themes. Another important aspect of May and Ridley's score is how it supports the relationships between the characters. Enola and Sherlock's complicated sibling bond is reflected through emotional musical themes that capture both conflict and mutual respect. Tewkesbury and Enola's relationship receives a warmer, more romantic musical treatment, representing their connection and their shared belief that love should exist alongside independence. Udoria Holmes' influence is also reflected through moments of emotional warmth, connecting the third film's themes to the values established throughout the series. Although the film introduces new composers, Aaron May and David Ridley's work respects the musical foundation created by Daniel Pemberton while allowing the franchise to grow. Instead of simply recreating the previous sound, the composers developed a more mature and cinematic style that reflects where Enola is in her journey. The score acknowledges the character's past while creating a new identity for the franchise as it enters a more complex stage. The transition from Daniel Pemberton's original music to Aaron May and David Ridley's score represents the broader evolution of Enola Holmes 3. As the story expands from personal mysteries into larger historical and political conflicts, the music follows the same progression by becoming more emotional, dramatic, and ambitious. Their compositions help establish the film as a deeper continuation of Enola's story while preserving the franchise's core themes of courage, independence, curiosity, and the determination to uncover the truth. Enola Holmes 3 was released worldwide by Netflix on July 1, 2026. Marking the return of one of the platform's most successful original mystery-adventure franchises. The film premiered exclusively through Netflix's global streaming service, allowing subscribers across numerous countries and territories to access the third installment at the same time. Unlike traditional theatrical releases, Netflix used the worldwide streaming launch strategy, making the film immediately available to a large international audience and continuing the franchise's identity as a major streaming event. The release represented a significant milestone for the Enola Holmes series, which had established itself as one of Netflix's most recognizable original film properties. The first film, released in 2020, introduced audiences to Millie Bobby Brown's interpretation of Enola Holmes and became widely popular for its combination of mystery, adventure, humor, and coming-of-age storytelling. The sequel, Enola Holmes 2, 2022, expanded the character's journey by focusing on social issues and showing Enola becoming a more confident detective. The release of Enola Holmes 3 continued that progression by presenting a more mature version of the character as she faced larger personal and historical challenges. The July 2026 release date was chosen as the film entered a new era for the franchise. The third installment arrived with several major changes, including a new director in Philip Barantini and a darker, more dramatic tone compared with the earlier films. The release introduced audiences to a more experienced Enola Holmes who was no longer simply proving herself as a detective but was now confronting complex issues involving marriage, family expectations, political corruption, and historical injustice. The film's release emphasized the evolution of the franchise from a youthful mystery adventure into a broader historical thriller with emotional depth. Before its worldwide debut, Enola Holmes 3 generated strong anticipation due to the return of its major cast members. Millie Bobby Brown returned as Enola Holmes, continuing her role as both the lead performer and producer. Fans were also eager to see the return of Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes, Louis Partridge as Lord Tewkesbury, Helena Bonham Carter as Eudoria Holmes, and Himesh Patel as Dr. John Watson. The announcement that Sharon Duncan Brewster would return as a major character connected to the film's central mystery also increased interest, particularly because the third film introduced a new threat involving Professor Moriarty. Netflix's promotional campaign focused heavily on the expanded scale of the film and the transformation of Enola's character. Marketing materials highlighted her journey from a young detective searching for independence into a more experienced investigator balancing personal relationships and professional responsibilities. The campaign also emphasized the return of Sherlock Holmes, the introduction of Moriarty as a major antagonist, and the mystery surrounding Sherlock's disappearance. The film's Malta setting became one of the major promotional elements surrounding its release. Netflix highlighted the historic locations, Mediterranean landscapes, and visual scale of the production as important differences from the previous films. The use of Valletta, Medina, and other Maltese locations helped present Enola Holmes 3 as a larger international adventure rather than a mystery limited to Victorian London. The historical themes involving British colonial influence, military secrets, and hidden treasure were also promoted as part of the film's more mature storytelling approach. The release campaign also focused on the emotional relationships at the heart of the story. Promotional materials emphasized the evolving relationships between Enola and Sherlock, showing their continued disagreements but also their growing respect for each other as detectives. The romance between Enola and Tewkesbury was another major focus, with the film exploring how Enola could embrace love without sacrificing her independence. These personal elements were presented alongside the film's mystery and action sequences to appeal to both returning fans and new viewers. Following its release on Netflix, Enola Holmes 3 received generally positive to mixed reviews from critics. Many reviewers praised Millie Bobby Brown's performance, noting her continued ability to portray Enola as an intelligent, determined, and emotionally complex protagonist. Critics also highlighted the chemistry among the returning cast, the visual presentation of Malta, the expanded historical themes, and the film's combination of detective mystery, adventure, and character development. However, some critics had mixed reactions to certain aspects of the film. While the darker tone and larger-scale storyline were appreciated by some reviewers, others felt that the mystery lacked the originality and freshness of the first film. Comparisons were also made between the third installment and the previous entries, with some critics arguing that the franchise's shift toward a more serious historical drama reduced some of the playful charm that originally defined the series. Despite the mixed critical response, Enola Holmes 3 was regarded as a successful continuation of the franchise and an important step in Enola Holmes' character development. The film expanded the series beyond traditional detective adventures by exploring themes of justice, identity, historical responsibility, and personal freedom. Its release demonstrated Netflix's continued investment in original film franchises built around recognizable characters and global audiences. The July 2026 debut of Enola Holmes 3 ultimately represented more than just the return of a popular character. It marked the transformation of Enola Holmes from a young woman discovering her abilities into a confident detective who had established her own reputation. By combining mystery, adventure, romance, and historical drama, the film continued the franchise's central message that Enola's greatest strength comes from remaining true to herself while creating her own path. Enola Holmes 3 received a mixed but generally favorable response from film critics, with reactions divided between appreciation for the film's performances, adventurous style, and more mature themes, and criticism toward its mystery structure, pacing, and originality. Many reviewers agreed that the third installment successfully continued the development of Enola Holmes as a character, particularly through Millie Bobby Brown's increasingly confident performance, but some felt that the film did not fully capture the freshness, creativity, and playful energy that made the first two movies popular. The critical discussion surrounding the film focused largely on whether the franchise's move toward a darker and more historically focused storyline represented meaningful growth or whether it sacrificed some of the charm and excitement that defined the earlier entries. Critics generally praised Enola Holmes 3 for allowing Enola to enter a more mature stage of her journey. The film's exploration of adulthood, independence, romantic commitment, family expectations, and historical responsibility was viewed by many reviewers as an ambitious expansion of the franchise. Several critics appreciated that the story attempted to move beyond a simple detective adventure by incorporating themes of British colonialism, political corruption, and the consequences of imperial actions. The Malta setting was also highlighted as one of the film's strongest elements, with reviewers praising the production design, locations, and visual atmosphere created by the island's historic architecture and landscapes. However, some critics argued that the more serious direction came at the expense of the series' original personality. While the earlier films balanced mystery with humor, youthful energy, and Enola's playful connection with the audience, some reviewers felt that Enola Holmes 3 occasionally became too focused on its historical themes and lost some of the spontaneous charm that made the character appealing. The film's attempt to combine a personal story about Enola's future with the larger political conspiracy was considered ambitious, but some critics felt the two elements did not always blend smoothly. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film received an approval rating of 68% based on reviews from 63 critics. The website's consensus stated, "Despite a muddled story and diminished spark, Enola Holmes 3 succeeds thanks to Millie Bobby Brown's winning performance and some lively action." The rating reflected a general agreement that while the movie had noticeable weaknesses in its storytelling, it remained entertaining due to Brown's performance, energetic action sequences, and the continued appeal of the franchise's characters. Many Rotten Tomatoes critics considered Brown the central reason the film remained engaging, praising her ability to maintain Enola's intelligence, confidence, and emotional warmth even when the screenplay was viewed as uneven. The Rotten Tomatoes response also suggested that the third film faced the challenge of following two successful predecessors. Some critics compared the movie to the earlier installments and felt that the mystery lacked the same level of originality and excitement. While the first film introduced Enola's world and the second expanded her detective abilities, some reviewers felt that the third entry relied more heavily on familiar franchise elements rather than introducing a completely fresh direction. Nevertheless, critics generally agreed that Brown's performance prevented the film from feeling uninspired. On Metacritic, Enola Holmes 3 received a weighted average score of 60 out of 100 based on 16 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. The Metacritic score reflected the divided critical response, with some reviewers praising the film's ambition, performances, and historical subject matter, while others criticized its uneven pacing and less engaging central mystery. Many critics viewed the film as a respectable continuation of the series that successfully expanded Enola's character but stopped short of becoming the franchise's strongest entry. Frank Sheck of The Hollywood Reporter gave the film a positive review and highlighted Millie Bobby Brown's development as Enola Holmes. He noted that Brown had matured nicely in the role, emphasizing her stronger dramatic abilities, increased confidence, and improved comedic timing. According to Sheck, Brown successfully portrays a version of Enola who is older, more self-assured, and capable of carrying a more emotionally complex story. He praised the way the performance showed Enola becoming less focused on proving herself and more focused on understanding her own values and choices. Although Sheck acknowledged that the film occasionally suffered from pacing issues, he ultimately praised its thematic ambition. He particularly highlighted the film's anti-colonialist message, arguing that the exploration of historical exploitation and imperial corruption gave the movie unexpected depth. He believed that these serious themes added a meaningful layer to the otherwise entertaining adventure format, allowing Enola Holmes 3 to stand apart from a typical young adult mystery film. Natalia Winkleman of the New York Times also praised Millie Bobby Brown's performance, describing her as the film's greatest strength. Winkleman wrote that Brown shines, emphasizing her ability to bring energy, intelligence, and emotional complexity to the character. She praised Brown's balance between Enola's confidence and vulnerability, noting that the actress continues to make the character appealing through her charisma and strong screen presence. Winkleman also highlighted the importance of Brown's performance in maintaining the film's entertainment value, while acknowledging that the story itself may not always reach the same level as previous installments. She argued that Brown's commitment to the role makes the film more enjoyable than many similar young adult action-adventure productions. Her review suggested that Enola Holmes remains an engaging character largely because of Brown's ability to combine humor, determination, and emotional honesty. Benjamin Lee of The Guardian offered a more critical assessment of the film, giving it 2 out of 5 stars. Lee criticized the central mystery, describing it as too slow and too simple to create genuine suspense. He argued that while the film's shorter runtime compared with previous entries might appear to improve the pacing, it instead reflected what he saw as a lack of new ideas and reduced creative energy. Lee also questioned the effectiveness of Enola's transition into adulthood. While he recognized Brown's talent and commitment to the role, he felt that the performance sometimes struggled to find the right balance between the playful confidence of the earlier films and the emotional weight required for a more mature character. He suggested that the film did not provide enough complexity for Brown to fully explore Enola's growth, making some scenes feel more difficult and forced than naturally energetic. Despite his criticisms, Lee acknowledged that the film contained thoughtful ideas and moments of ambition. He described Enola Holmes 3 as an often thoughtful yet ultimately lesser treacle, suggesting that while the movie attempted to explore important themes, it did not achieve the same impact or originality as the previous installments. Kate Rebland of IndieWire gave the film a mixed review, focusing on the challenges created by the franchise's changing tone. She recognized that the film tackled more serious issues, particularly its exploration of colonial history and political injustice, but felt that the movie lacked the excitement and personality that previously defined the series. According to Rebland, the film's more restrained approach sometimes made it feel disconnected from the energetic spirit of the earlier movies. Rebland also argued that the franchise had reached a point where Enola's character could support more complicated storytelling. She suggested that audiences were ready to see Enola become more mature, intellectually challenged, and emotionally complex. While she appreciated the attempt to grow the character, she felt that the mystery itself was not strong enough to represent the next stage of Enola's evolution. The performances of the supporting cast also received attention from critics. Henry Cavill's return as Sherlock Holmes was praised for continuing the complicated sibling dynamic between Sherlock and Enola, with many reviewers appreciating the character's gradual acceptance that Enola had become his equal rather than someone he needed to protect. Louis Partridge's portrayal of Tewkesbury was also noted positively, with critics highlighting the emotional importance of his relationship with Enola and the film's exploration of partnership rather than traditional expectations of marriage. The inclusion of Moriarty as a major antagonist was considered an effective way to expand the franchise's mythology. Although some critics felt the villain's storyline could have been developed further, the film's action sequences, production design, and visual presentation were among the more consistently praised aspects. Critics highlighted the multi-locations, period costumes, and cinematic scale as improvements that helped make the third installment feel larger and more ambitious. The combination of mystery, action, and historical drama was seen as one of the film's strengths, even by reviewers who had concerns about the screenplay. Overall, the critical response to Enola Holmes 3 reflected a film that successfully continued the franchise while facing challenges in balancing expansion with the qualities that made the series popular. Critics largely agreed that Millie Bobby Brown remains the defining element of the franchise, bringing intelligence, humor, and emotional depth to Enola Holmes. The film's attempt to explore more mature themes, particularly colonial history and personal independence, was widely recognized as ambitious, even though some reviewers felt the execution was uneven. Despite its criticisms, Enola Holmes 3 was generally considered a worthwhile continuation of the series. Rather than being viewed as a failure, the film was seen as an imperfect but entertaining evolution of the character. Its strengths in performance, visuals, and thematic ambition helped maintain the appeal of Enola Holmes, while the mixed reactions regarding the mystery and pacing suggested that future installments could continue developing the character with even greater complexity and originality. Review 1 Enola Holmes 3 is another enjoyable outing for Netflix's young detective, but for the first time, the series feels like it's going through the motions a little. It's still fun, easy to watch and packed with plenty of charm, but once you peel back the thin layer, there's just not a great deal underneath. This time, Enola swaps the streets of London for the sun-soaked coast of Malta as she's about to marry Lord Tewkesbury. Of course, things don't quite go to plan when Sherlock is kidnapped, kicking off the latest mystery. Malta is a lovely backdrop, and it's nice seeing the series move somewhere completely different. It helps the third film stand out visually, even if the story itself never quite reaches the same heights as the first two. Millie Bobby Brown slips back into the role with the same confidence she's had since the first film. At this point, you know exactly what you're getting from her. The fourth wall breaks still land, she's as likable as ever, and she keeps everything moving along. I wouldn't say it's her strongest performance of the three, but it's consistently good, which is pretty much how I describe the films as a whole. They've always been enjoyable without ever feeling exceptional. The real standouts for me were Henry Cavill and Sharon Duncan Brewster. I've always liked Cavill's version of Sherlock because he never feels like he's trying to steal the spotlight from Enola, but whenever he appears, the film instantly has a bit more weight behind it. Sharon Duncan Brewster is equally impressive, bringing a calm authority that makes every scene she's in feel important. I actually found myself wanting more from both of them. Himesh Patel is great once again as Dr. Watson, and Helena Bonham Carter is as entertaining as ever. There's also one familiar character who's missing for most of the film, and I think longtime fans will definitely know this. Their absence leaves a bigger gap than I expected. For a film carrying the Holmes name, there's surprisingly little detective work that lets you join in. The first two films constantly dropped clues, sent you in the wrong direction and kept you guessing. Here, everything unfolds in a fairly straight line. You're not really piecing things together alongside Enola so much as waiting for the film to hand you the answers. There are ideas involving stolen treasure, Malta's history and Britain's colonial past, but none of them are explored deeply enough to make the mystery feel especially clever. I also wasn't completely sold on the wedding storyline. Enola and Tewkesbury still have plenty of chemistry together, and if you've been rooting for them since the first film, you'll probably enjoy seeing that relationship move forward. For me, though, it was occasionally distracting from what I was really there for. I'd have happily traded a little of the romance for a few more twists and a stronger investigation. That said, I was never bored. Philip Barantini keeps things moving at a good pace, and the film still has the slick editing and playful style that make these films stand out. I still love how locations, letters and bits of text appear naturally on screen rather than stopping everything for an exposition dump. It's a small touch, but it's become part of the series' identity. I also think this is one of those films that's simply easy to spend a couple of hours with. Even when the story isn't doing anything particularly surprising, the cast are clearly enjoying themselves, and that energy rubs off on the audience. There are enough laughs, enough action and enough heart to keep things entertaining from beginning to end. I do think this is the weakest entry of the three, but that's more down to the script than anything else. The production is still strong, Malta looks fantastic, and the performances are exactly what you'd expect from this cast. It's just missing that clever mystery at the center that made the previous films so much fun. Enola Holmes' 3rd of may not be the franchise's smartest case, but it's still an enjoyable one to spend a couple of hours with. The deductions are a little more obvious this time, and the mystery is missing the twists you'd expect from the Holmes name, yet there's still enough charm, humor and likable performances to make the journey worthwhile. Enola Holmes 3 doesn't quite solve the mystery of how to top its predecessors, but it's still a fun adventure with plenty of charm. While the investigation is a little too straightforward, the cast, gorgeous Maltese setting and easygoing tone make this another enjoyable case to crack, even if it's the weakest file in Enola's detective cabinet. 2. Why so gloomy, Enola? Why so drab? Why so dull? These are questions I ask myself while watching Philip Barantini's Enola Holmes 3, a sequel that made sense, considering how great Harry Bradbeer's 2022 second entry to one of Netflix's most popular films was. Millie Bobby Brown was born to play the titular character at the center of Nancy Springer's book series of the same name. She's given the most compelling performances of her career, constantly involving the audience in her mysteries by breaking the fourth wall and allowing them inside her mind palace, while we still get access to Enola's intuitive mind inside a story that consistently flows between her past adventures and her current case. What's on screen is staged with such lethargic energy that it begins to lose our attention. It's a real shame that Bradbeer was likely busy with Spider Noir and couldn't return to finish off what could have been a great trilogy. Barantini has no clue how to treat characters that were once interesting to watch on screen, now devoid of the wit and charm that made their respective filmic iterations of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's large universe stand out. The core problem that plagues Enola Holmes 3 is how self-serious it is, compared to the last two installments, starting with the kidnapping of Enola's brother, Sherlock, Henry Cavill, the day of her planned wedding to Duke Sperry, Louis Partridge. Of course, this is a personal case for Enola, as her brother means everything to her, and his behavior felt suspicious before her nuptials. But the one defining trait that has characterized this franchise is fun, and that word is sadly absent from a sequel with no discernible identity of its own. Barantini is primarily known for his continuous one-take films and television series, including Boiling Point, which was followed by a limited series, and the Emmy Award-winning Adolescence, which could have given this third entry in the Enola Holmes franchise a particular flair. However, you'd never know that he was behind the camera for this one. Speaking of, there isn't a single memorable set piece in the movie. While Bradbeer's second installment had a bevy of playful and kinetic action, what's staged in Enola Holmes 3 is devoid of any propulsion or the same excitement found in the last go-around with the character. Even the climactic action fight between the various characters and Moriarty, Sharon Duncan Brewster, makes little visual sense. The action is lazily shot and choreographed, and the editing is indifferently handled. It's almost as if this sequel was made to fill Netflix's quota for movies to watch while folding laundry rather than something with actual cinematic substance. When Enola reunites with Moriarty for the first time in this film, the resulting confrontation is so nauseating that one has no idea where the characters are in any given moment. It almost feels like the Superman 4, The Quest for Peace of the Enola Holmes franchise. The studio was somehow able to get all the original players from the last few movies, minus a actor's memorable presence as Lestrade, but doesn't put the same effort into staging sequences with the same sense of grandeur as we've come to expect. The case isn't at all interesting, either. It attempts to tie so many loose threads together rather conveniently, rather than making all the puzzle pieces feel urgent. We never understand Moriarty's motivations apart from a personal vendetta against Enola and Sherlock, or the lengths she takes for her plan to be foolproof and make the world's greatest detectives stumble as they try to uncover her sinister plot. The final nail in the coffin occurs in the movie's very last shot, an image so laughable that one could treat it as a deus ex machina and be entirely correct. In any event, Jack Thorne's screenplay is such a far cry from his previous one that one can't believe he didn't take another pass and further flesh out what was most essential in this sequel. Thankfully, none of the actors has lost a step. Millie Bobby Brown is still excellent as Enola Holmes, although her relationship with Louis Partridge's Tewksbury takes a bit of a backseat here. Their sequences together don't have the same emotional potency as the last film. Henry Cavill is once again wasted, in a role he could have probably done in his sleep, and doesn't even get a few heart-to-heart conversations with Enola as he had in the previous two outings. He's confined to a jail cell for most of the runtime and has nothing to do. The casting of Sharon Duncan Brewster as Moriarty is particularly inspired, and the way she was set up in the second film made us believe she'd had a significant role to play here. Unfortunately, the character is nowhere near as psychologically riveting as some recent portrayals of the antagonist in previous movies. This Moriarty is reduced to a mustache-twirling villain with very little concrete motivation that would make her pop off the screen. The climax feels stunted because we don't understand the villain beyond her sheer hatred of Sherlock and Enola, and yet in the various source materials, it's far more nuanced than that. It's sad that the Enola Holmes franchise will likely end on such a whimper, as there is doubt whether it will continue beyond the third film. What could have been one of Netflix's most prized assets has turned out to once again be just another cog in the streaming algorithm. If there's going to be a changing of the directorial guard, allow them to infuse their own sensibilities in the material they're treating. Barantini doesn't look like he cares much, despite the rock-solid work from all of his cast members. If it weren't for them, I probably would have turned this movie off long ago. Life is too short to waste my time on direct-to-streaming content that offers little to no value to me or anyone watching. 3 Plot: Adventure chases Detective Enola Holmes to Malta, where personal and professional dreams collide on a case more tangled and treacherous than any she has faced before. Review: When COVID-19 forced the first Enola Holmes film from a Warner Bros. Theatrical release to Netflix, it became a massive hit, garnering over 76 million streams. A sequel followed, improving on the tone and pace while telling a story inspired by a historical event. The third entry brings back stars Millie Bobby Brown, Himesh Patel, Louis Partridge, Himesh Patel, and Helena Bonham Carter, as well as screenwriter Jack Thorne, but shifts directing duties to adolescence director Philip Barantini. The result is a nice change of pace that shifts from England to the very different setting of Malta for bigger action and adventure in a foreign locale, with Enola facing old enemies and some new ones. A fast and fun addition to the franchise, Enola Holmes 3 is the best entry in the series. The first two Enola Holmes films were made when Millie Bobby Brown was still a teenager and leaned into the precociousness of the underage sleuth. At ages 16 and 18, Enola was a brash counterbalance to the reserved approach of her older brother Sherlock. Henry Cavill. In Enola Holmes 3, the title character is now in her 20s and every bit as troublesome as before, but her maturity has shifted the film's tone slightly compared to the first two. Agreeing to wed Tewksbury, Louis Partridge, in Malta, where his parents were married, Enola invites Sherlock to walk her down the aisle. But, when the ceremony is interrupted, Enola learns from Dr. Watson, Himesh Patel, that her brother has gone missing, sending the younger Holmes on the case to find out what is going on. What follows is a larger mystery that pulls Enola, Watson, and Tewksbury together to find Sherlock and maybe bring justice to the British colony at the same time. While the first Enola Holmes centered on a case involving Tewksbury and Enola's mother, Doria, Helena Bonham Carter, the sequel combined a case with the very relating 88 match girl strike, making for a more engaging mystery. The increased screen time for Henry Cavill was a nice touch, as was the introduction of a new version of Professor Moriarty, played by Sharon Duncan Brewster. Dune. Enola Holmes 3 returns to an original story, but one rooted in the British Empire's history of stealing from the countries it colonized, a plot device that explains its setting in Malta. Right off the bat, Enola Holmes 3 gives us the wedding between Enola and Tewksbury, which naturally goes awry before setting the young couple on the case. Filmed on location in Malta, Enola Holmes 3 benefits from the distinct look of the Mediterranean island while also chronicling a well-known British injustice, a topic that has been a major news story for several decades, as reparations and the return of plundered treasure remain hot topics. Clocking in at just an hour and 47 minutes, Enola Holmes 3 is 15 minutes shorter than either of the first two films. Netflix has long been known for letting its original films run long, but Enola Holmes 3 makes good use of its running time and does not overstay its welcome. The story moves along quickly, and the plot, which hews closer to the Holmes and Tewkesbury families, gives Himesh Patel more to do than in either of the previous films, while also featuring Henry Cavill's Sherlock in the main plot. Millie Bobby Brown and Louis Partridge get to spend a great deal of screen time together as Enola Holmes 3 comes full circle to tell the next natural step of their relationship. Of course, no wedding in this franchise can go off without a hitch, which allows the story to build a fun, energetic sense of adventure alongside its mystery elements. While veteran Helmer Harry Bradbeer did a solid job directing the first two films, Enola Holmes 3 marks the biggest feature film project to date for Philip Barantini, the acclaimed director of Adolescence. Barantini chose a good project to expand his directorial chops, reuniting with his Adolescence screenwriter, Jack Thorne, who wrote the first two movies as well. The writer-director combo makes for a natural team to build the story, set almost entirely in Malta, which uses the seashore, rocky desert lands, and unique landscape to take the Holmes siblings out of their familiar land and comfort zone. This shift also allows the Enola Holmes series to grow with the actors. While the novels that inspired the movies stick with Enola as a teenager, following Millie Bobby Brown and Louis Partridge into adulthood means some of the more brash elements of the prior movies are toned down a bit. Yes, Enola still breaks the fourth wall, but it is used less frequently than either of the first movies. Where a fourth entry in the franchise could go remains a mystery, as the film ends in a way that could cap the franchise or simply close this particular chapter. Henry Cavill and Millie Bobby Brown make for great detectives, especially when they team up, something that has been used sparingly in the first three films. Enola Holmes 3 is the lightest of the movies in the series, making for an easier and more fun adventure than the first two. I had fun with Enola Holmes 3, and it makes for a fun watch over the 4th of July holiday weekend, especially if you are looking for counter-programming compared to what is playing on the big screen. Enola Holmes 3 is an easy and fun watch that will hopefully be the first of many globe-trotting adventures we get to enjoy as Millie Bobby Brown continues to grow with this character. For in September 2020, I claim that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's iconic character Sherlock Holmes has enjoyed a remarkable resurgence in popularity in the 21st century. My opinion hasn't changed, and I can offer ample evidence to support that assertion. During the last few years, there have been many new adaptations, spin-offs and derivative works, including television series such as Sherlock in Russia, 2020, The Irregulars, 2021, Shakar Home, 2024, Sherlock Daughter, 2025, Watson, 2025, and Young Sherlock, 2026. The last feature film revolving around the main characters was 2018's mystery comedy Holmes Watson from Sony Pictures, releasing through its Columbia Pictures label. At least two low-budget indie productions have been produced since then, including Sherlock Holmes, Mare of the Night and Sherlock Holmes and the Angels of Vengeance, both from 2025. But wait, hey, there's more. Japan's production IG created Moriarty the Patriot, an anime television series based on the mystery manga series in 2020, and Afoot Games produced The Beekeeper's Picnic, an indie point-and-click adventure game based on the Sherlock Holmes stories, in 2025. And then there's the Enola Holmes movie franchise, based upon the young adult fiction series The Enola Holmes Mysteries by Nancy Springer. Springer wrote 10 books in the series A along with one short story A starting with The Case of the Missing Marquis, published in 2006. According to the author's website, Enola Holmes and the Clanging Coffin, published earlier this year, is the 10th and final book in the series. Enola Holmes 3, directed by Philip Barantini, was released on July 1 on Netflix. The third installment in this franchise comes with a conspicuous downgrade in storytelling quality. Compared to the previous entries, this film falls flat, lacking both the effervescent charm of the main character and the bouncy energy that invigorated the earlier adventures. Enola Holmes 3 is too comfortable and conventional to shake its own banality, leaving viewers with tedious, uninteresting characters and tired and predictable plot points. The movie opens with a wedding in Malta, except it isn't. Having already delayed her arrival at the ceremony due to prenuptial jitters, Enola, Millie Bobby Brown, dashes off in a carriage only to be impeded by the timely arrival of Dr. Watson, Himesh Patel, her brother's friend, who reveals that Sherlock, Henry Cavill, has been abducted. All this information is conveyed through a series of awkward flashbacks and narration, with Enola frequently breaking the fourth wall to speak directly to the audience. Although this element was present in the previous movies, in Enola 3 it becomes excessive and grating. Meanwhile, poor Tewkesbury, Louis Partridge, Enola's fiancé tilde copyright, is wandering about pouting because he thinks he's been left at the altar. Later that night, Tewkesbury's mother, Lady Tewkesbury, Hattie Moorhan, is kidnapped and there is a fire at the Hotel Cornwallis where the wedding party had been staying. Enola knows that Sherlock was working secretly on a case while attending the wedding in Malta. She discovers a few clues in Sherlock's room and has an encounter with a dying Maltese soldier who mutters a single word. All these pointers soon lead her almost accidentally to Professor Moriarty, Sharon Duncan Brewster. This tale's version of Sherlock's nemesis is scripted as a caricature villain, prone to melodramatic monologuing and fanatical machinations. Duncan Brewster does a fine job with the role, but the way the story's antagonist is written feels blatantly cartoonish. Woven into the mystery is a background story about British colonialism and looted gold. Though the intention may have been honorable, here the subject matter is cumbersome. It is affixed to the main storyline in a most inelegant manner. None of the characters are particularly pleasant. The romance between Enola and Tewkesbury feels shallow and spurious. The viewer will discern very little in the way of emotional stakes and character growth. The new movie adds nothing significant to the franchise, and in many ways the main character seems less responsible and capable than in prior films. Now may be a good time to point out that this film is not based on any of Springer's tales and that Enola never gets married in the book series. Remember, Springer's Enola Holmes Mysteries is marketed as a young adult fiction series of detective novels. This first film in the franchise targeted that same audience, particularly young women who can find an unconventional, intrepid hero in Enola. In the previous films, Brown depicted the character as someone who is willing to rebel against outdated societal mores. Enola rivals her genius brothers in intellect and ingenuity, and she exhibits superior empathy and compassion. She is fiercely independent. In Enola Holmes 3, the character is too eager to forfeit her independence. Enola Holmes 3 is tolerable escapist fare, and that's fine, but it is a disappointment given the success of the previous films. It is regrettably unexceptional for a character that can deliver so much more, given a worthy script. On the other hand, Enola Holmes 3 is a splendid marketing campaign for a vacation in Malta. I'm already packing my bags. Lee Clark Zomp is entertainment editor at Tampa Bay newspapers, a Tomatometer-approved critic, and an author of short fiction. He can be reached by email at lzomp@tbeanweekly.com. 5 Detective Enola Holmes heads to Malta, where her aspirations merge in her most complex and dangerous case yet. One would be forgiven for not paying close attention to the writing team behind Netflix's Enola Holmes movie series, which is not a disparaging comment but rather an acknowledgement that it doesn't exactly boast household names. While watching Enola Holmes 3, though, it's transparent that the reins have been handed over to another director, as this entry mostly comes across as a flat, wedding-centric side story with a mystery that exists out of obligation, stuffed with returning character cameos rather than delivering compelling suspense and brain-teasing. For a film with narration that confidently uses Millie Bobby Brown's eponymous detective as a mouthpiece to assert that all good movies either begin or end with a wedding, which is already a confounding statement as a large number of movies, good and bad, have nothing to do with marriage at all. It sure doesn't deliver on that proclamation or live up to the quality of the first 2 movies. With Philip Barantini taking over those directorial duties, Jack Thorne remains on board as the screenwriter, inspired Nancy Springer's novels. Nearly everything about Enola Holmes 3 comes across as everyone involved fulfilling a contract, sometimes appearing for brief moments before being sidelined or showing up randomly, inside a narrative that's not engaging with its central dilemma of whether or not marriage is right for the young detective who has come into her own. She is now essentially on equal footing in terms of skill alongside her brother Sherlock, once again played by Henry Cavill, albeit with such short cumulative screen time that one would assume there were scheduling conflicts or some other obstacle. More focused on assisting the downtrodden and addressing social issues rather than high society. Far more interesting than anything else in the film is a subplot involving a Maltese man named Mickey Elmizzi, Joe Atsaparty, who, for whatever reason, has his character and performance reduced to a punchline of repeating his name over and over again whenever introducing himself, with a justifiable axe to grind against the presence of the British throwing their weight around. This also ties into the central mystery, which involves the kidnapping of Sherlock Holmes in Malta, some other shady invited guests, with a couple of them going missing or winding up dead themselves, without grace or substance, depending on how astutely one engages with the opening sequence or even takes a gander at the cast list. There aren't necessarily any satisfying surprises in the whodunit department, which is criminal for a movie in this genre. As mentioned, at times it's simply throwing out characters from the past two films, hoping that something resembling a greatest hits compilation of characters also doubles as compelling plot twists. The fact that it does this while further pushing anything related to Malta's and Mickey Eel's struggles almost becomes borderline insulting. If all one wishes to do is merely watch these characters interact again, centered on a wedding that may or may not play out by the end, it might suffice, since the performances and casting remain strong. But everything else that made the series a delightfully sneaky surprise in a sad landscape of forgettable streaming content is missing. The fourth wall breaking from Enola Holmes is significantly cut down on, there are less visual flourishes, the expensive Netflix money is still on display though, making for the occasional gorgeous travelogue site. The story has almost nothing to say about Victorian-era marriage or its ongoing conflict in Malta at the center, and the writing itself regarding the detective putting together the pieces and breaking the case open isn't nearly as sharp, which is the most inexplicable part of this, considering screenwriting duties haven't changed.